Morning, everybody. Nice to have you here. It's a slightly cooler morning than yesterday. Our guest today is Santa Khurai. Santa is from Manipur. She is a Meitei transgender writer, poet, activist, and the author of this really interesting book called The Yellow Sparrow. It's a memoir. It traces her life from when she was about 15 or 16. And I have so many questions to ask her. So I'm going to get right into it. Hi, Santa. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Miriam. Yeah.
I know
Thanks for inviting me. And
it's been a long journey. She arrived at sort of 1:30 this morning and is a little sleep deprived, so bear with both of us. I want to take it right back to the beginning. You've written a book, but you say that writing was a passion from when you were a young person. But it seems to me that it was also a kind of therapy for you. You just wrote because you had nowhere else to talk. Tell us about that.
yeah, being a transgender person is not an easy life. And I always feel that this earth is not a best place for people like me to survive because of the layers of oppression and rejection and also the backlashes that one has to gone through just to survive. It's a very big challenge. So there were times that when I grew up in a very conflicted zone. So my difficult was again multidimensional. So it was always very difficult to get people who were willing to listen to my stories. And then when I enter my puberty state as a psychological scare person. The way I wanted to shape my body and my body development was completely opposite. That was a very big trauma in my life. And there were times that I started attract to boys, and there were no one to share my stories. Even my father was very cruel against me. And my mother, on the other hand, was in between me and my father. My father was her husband, and I was her lovely child. So she did not know where to stand, and for whom she should, be on site, on site. So writing was one way to ban out all the frustration that was taken inside me. So whenever I feel low, then I just took a piece of paper, then a pen or a pencil, then just started writing everything down there. So that was how this beginning of this Yellow Sparrow started. Yeah.
And you chose the title Yellow Sparrow. I mean, you gave the book the title Yellow Sparrow after a poem you'd written. Why poem? I mean, you'd written other poems also. You choose that poem and the title for this book?
Yellow Sparrow, I gave this title because, when you are understanding what we see Yellow Sparrow, the color is like that deep olive green. So yellow sparrow, if a yellow born as a sparrow in colors, then that's different from the entire yellow family. So people doesn't want to be a different person or a different entity to be a part of a community, to be a part of a family. That's why I always feel left out. It's not only in the community spaces in Manipur, not in the family, but when I started joining this activism in the larger queer and trans movement and culture, I often left out. It could be because of my background, my location, my racial identity. So I have always been treated different. So that was the reason why I gave this title Yellow Sparrow. But actually, that difference, I celebrate that difference. So difference in the sense, not only for me only, there are a lot of different people. There are disabled people who are not able to access all the benefit that is available in a society, in a community. So these stories reflect to all the peoples and convey a very powerful message to these people who have been treated differently, to celebrate that difference.
You know, you talk about being different, being the other, being kept out of communities. But one of the things that made you accepted and acceptable was the fact that you were the first person in your neighborhood to pass your matriculation exam with very high marks. How did that sort of help you navigate a difficult time?
Yeah, that also makes me realize even we are very much oppressed by the society or the family, then education is very important, because education kind of helps me to navigate those challenges and difficulties. Because that time what people know about me is like when somebody asks who is Santa Khurai, oh, Santa Khurai is the person who passed out matriculation in my neighbors for the first, in one trial. So that was also give me a kind of leverage and privilege to be a part of the larger community. And that also helps me to connect with other people. The other neighbors' parents, they started hiring me to give coaching to their children.
Tuition.
So yeah, that's yeah.
Now you mentioned briefly your home, your mom and your dad. They both dealt with you very differently. Your dad wasn't particularly supportive. Your mom, like you said, was kind of in the middle and not sure what to do. She loved you, you were her child, but she was also your father's wife. And there's one story you talk about, comes much later in the book, where you come home after a pageant, I think, and she's left food out there, the fish curry, but there's ash put on top of it. And you say you thought she was trying to teach you a lesson about your ways. What was living in that kind of home like for you?
Miriam, there is no one to understand the trauma, transgender trauma. There is no one actually. That was the kind of punishment that I used to receive very regularly. A kind of trauma. That was a very big punishment against my feminine identity. But one thing is like I never give up, because I wanted to be true to myself. I always wanted to be vocal about my rights, and I also wanted to do more about the welfare for my community. That's why people like me have to take risks in life. But it's a trauma, and it's very difficult for a cisgender heterosexual person or the community to understand the trauma that a transgender person has gone through in their life.
You know, throughout the book, one of the things that struck me is that Manipur, the society in Manipur is actually reasonably trans-tolerant, right? Much more so than certainly the rest of mainland India, right? And like just the name, Anupi Manbi, what is the literal translation of that term?
Nupi Manbi, the literal translation of Nupi Manbi is a like woman.
Like a woman,
Yeah,
right?
like a woman, yeah.
And to think that an indigenous language has had a term that is simple, easy, and has been part of the language for a long time and isn't, I mean, personally, I find the word trans kind of cold. It doesn't really mean anything to me. But a Nupi Manbi is someone who's like a woman. It is so simple and to the point. So when you're in a society that actually does have culturally and traditionally a kind of tolerance towards transgender people. Oh, sorry, you can't, can you all hear me? Yes? Okay. It must be schizophrenic, right? To be at home with a father who treats you like that, but to be still have an identity that is recognized by your culture traditionally. What is that like?
We are always in a paradoxical position, but at the same time, most of my work, history has been an integral part, just to uncover the reality. My journey started, when some cultural group uh, publicly announced that Nupi Manbis, this transgender woman, would be prohibited to participate in biggest indigenous Hanamihi religion spaces, which is called Lai Harauba. So that kind of pushed me to start researching about the historical realities of the gender pluralism that was once existed in the actual Manipuri society. So Faida, Gender at Periphery, it was my first research book that uncovered the gender plurality and multiplicity that was once existed in actual Manipuri society before this British colonization and then Burmese colonization, and comes this larger Indian
Christianity.
humanitarian, majoritarianism culture. So like the kind of tolerance that we received, even though there is violence and discrimination meted out to the transgender peoples, is because we have a very long history of unconventional gender peoples that exist in Manipur. They have existed and they flourish in a different format. Like for example, in the early on time, it was the Nupa Amaibi, the shaman, who give prophecies to peoples. They took the roles of female and participated in the ritual occupation. Okay, then later comes Shumang Lila, where it's a performance where all the actors has to take the roles of female. All the actors are male,
men.
and they have to,
They play
all
female
the
parts.
female roles.
Yeah.
So that flourished, and in my books also you'll find that people often tag me as Lila Genupi Sabi and Amaibi, all those things. So it's there. So person like me coming out in, was born in a male body and come out as a woman is not a very big thing. It's not a strange thing to them. So like that was the reality why, even though there is violence and discrimination, faced by the transgender people, there is still a space where community can articulate their liberty in a different way. Like for example, the way we used to gather together in a late night in Polo Ground of Imphal. So that was, and the language also presents a lot of social nuances, social, cultural, and gender nuances. Like in Manipuri is a gender neutral language. We don't have gender pronoun. So like and the name precede gender, like Tomba, Chauba, these things are there. So it's clearly reflected in my research also. So the perception of gender depends on the perception of the society, the historical narratives around that community or society. It's very much interrelated.
Yeah, I was very struck by how trans-tolerant the society is. You mentioned briefly your nocturnal hunting grounds like Imphal Ground, Imphal Bazaar, Imphal Polo Ground, Indira Park. So as a young boy at that time, that was your way of getting out, finding a community, finding like people, and a way to kind of express who you were. But also at the same time, you were dealing with the army. You have a highly militarized society. You have the army everywhere. Most of the people of the army are not local Manipuris. In their dealings with you, I mean, there's a certain amount of military violence that happens to everyone in the society. Did you ever notice anything different in the way they dealt with you and your other trans friends versus the rest of the people?
Question, I was not hearing.
Did the army personnel who you came across every evening when you went out, did they treat you all differently? Were they more violent? Were they indifferent to your trans identity? Like, what was that like for the trans community and the army?
Army presence is not safe at all to the trans peoples, because in many of the incidents, when I was returning back late at night, then army used to threaten me. They used to brutally beaten me up. So it did not happen to me only. A lot of things happens to other trans people also. They were forced to have, sexual intercourse. If the trans person was not accepting their approach, then they will be beaten up. These things happens. So army presence is not safe for the transgender peoples. It's not for army peoples. All the very aggressive kind of forces presence is not safe for transgender peoples. Like for example, in this ongoing conflict also, transgender peoples are not safe. So if a society kind of have a very political uncertainty, then it is the trans peoples or the minority community who are going to face the severe and also the highest level of violence.
So you had a very short period in your life where you lived in South India. You came to Guntur to do a lab technician's course. And I was very struck. You said Guntur was not as advanced as other cities, but for me it was like America. What did you mean by that?
When I was in Guntur, I always have a very emotional connection with Guntur. That's why even today when these girls, they came to pick me up, I did not have my breakfast because I arrived very late yesterday, 1 o'clock morning. So, and I missed my breakfast. So I asked this girl to take me to a local hotel so that I can at least have couples of South Indian foods like idli and vada, and like I have that kind of taste with me for a quite long time. I'm very much familiar with South Indian foods. So Guntur was a village that time, and there was no that much development. After my study, I did not have a chance or opportunity to visit Guntur again, but I'll definitely visit Guntur because I miss Guntur. There I had this opportunity to live in the way I want. Nobody give critical attention towards my feminine expression. But at the same time, I also witnessed a trans person who was a middle age, and she did not have one arm, and she was wearing yellow sari. And every afternoon, she would come across in front of our hotel gate, clapping and begging from all the small shops. So when I saw that woman, I feel very much connected with that woman. I can live my life with her. That time I did not know the term transgender, I did not know the term hijra, I did not know any of this term. But somehow I felt connected to that woman. Okay, so that was the thing what makes me feel that Guntur was like America for me because I got freedom. And that time, my understanding and the view, my understanding about America is very liberty. People got a lot of freedom and equality. That's why I compare America with Guntur.
Okay. So you talked about the expression of your feminine identity. You trained to be a lab technician, but you had no interest in doing that work. But what you were always interested in was beauty, feminine beauty, the expression of it, and that took you into a whole different world of pageants. You then became a beautician, you set up a parlor, you worked in it, you were the manager of a trans dance group. I mean, you've led an incredibly colorful and interesting life. But this idea of feminine beauty, which you had even when you didn't know what it meant, you had from when you were very young. What has that been like to be able to now express yourself the way you do? Beautifully, I might add.
Uh, I cannot give a very finite answer on that question, but I always wanted to look beautiful, and this body is very expensive.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah, trans body is very expensive. I should say trans body is very expensive. In our whole life, we had invested a huge sum of amount just to achieve that, feminine looks, feminine appearance, and it's very expensive. People should understand this.
But how does it affect you emotionally when you wake up in the morning and you can dress the way you want to? How does that make you feel? Like when you put on, like I was admiring your jewelry earlier, which is incredibly beautiful. When you put that on, do you ever kind of remember a time when you couldn't? And what does this feel like
Yeah,
to you?
it's very different. Like when I started taking hormones, when I started this gender affirmative surgery, it kind of provided me a sense of completeness. I feel very complete now. Earlier, in my young age, there were times then when I sit in front of the mirror, I did not want to see my body. I just wanted to kill myself. I never wanted to look down because of the genital part that I had during those days. So it's very.
Sorry. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's working. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of difference. Like a person who are given this, what to say, a kind of ability to express their feminine identity and feminine expression, and those people who are, who are suppressed their identity, there is a lot of difference. So for the transgender peoples, the biggest trauma that we have gone through is not being able to live in the way we want. So transgender people should be supported by the parents, by the family members, by the neighbors, by the society, so that this kind of support would help transgender individual and the community to be a part of the larger society. They will definitely can become a very productive human in the society.
Before we get to your very productive present, there was a period in your life when you, you were working really hard, but you got into drugs, and then you got into alcohol. And those were pretty dark times. And then you quit. And that's when you began to write articles. And it was because of reading one of those articles that in 2010, you got an invitation from a gentleman called Dr. Bablu, who's one of the sort of foremost human rights workers in Manipur. So 2010 was a kind of seminal year where things changed. And you literally kind of became a different person after that. Tell me about that journey.
I had a very dark time. Like I was on drugs for almost 12 years. Then I switched to alcohol. Then I became alcoholic. There were a lot of reasons why I was resorted to drugs and alcohol, because as I have said earlier, there was no one who were willing to around me to listen to my story. Then I had to deal everything on my own. So drug and alcohol was one way to escape from all those, mental disturbance. So I've started using drugs, then alcohol. Then finally I realized that this is not life, because it was very temporal. Then you'll take 2 pills, then it will last it for 1.5 hours. Then again you'll take more pills. So unnecessarily it destroyed my life. I'm like, I have started a lot of, health issues. Like I've started a vision problem. I've started thinking problem. I've started forgotten things very quickly. So I also realized that if I wanted to, if I haven't, I always feel obliged to protect my peoples. So eventually I realized that if I wanted to do something for my community, then I have to be very strong. So one wanted to become a strong person, then one has to compromise life. That was also one biggest reason why I stopped using drugs and alcohol. And then parallelly, I got this opportunity from Bablu Loitongbam, and he invited me to represent the whole of Northeast, queer and trans. At that time, queer was not there. The term commonly used was LGBT. So I got that opportunity, and I had participated for the first time at the Universal Periodic Review, Geneva. No, it was organized by Geneva, United Nations. And yeah, that was the beginning of my activism journey, and I got my first exposure to the human rights community.
And so your life has taken a kind of full left turn, right? And for the last 14 or 15 years, this has been your work. Now, one of the other really interesting things about reading this book is understanding, you've become part of the queer community, become part of queer activism, and even there, in that world, there is still a sense of otherness, a sense of being the outsider, with a kind of lack of understanding of Manipur in general, the Northeast in general, but also what it means, what your indigeneity means. Tell us about that.
Othering people, it will take quite a long time to have that dialogue in a very healthy way because othering people is very common, and it's being a part of many inclusion, equity, and diversity projects. It's like you call somebody from a periphery or as a very underprivileged community and treated them as a token representation. And I often experience that in the larger platform. Like for, it may be certain reason. So my, my advocacy for bringing a more voice from the subaltern is not for Manipur only. I always empathize to people who, for example, in the mainland India also, there are a lot of trans people who cannot access to English language. So how about them? For me, I at least got this privilege to communicate in English. Yeah, it's working.
Can anyone remember where I was?
Oh, about inclusion, diversity.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah. So I have written about this othering peoples is because I wanted to see more empathy from peoples who are in the privilege. Because when I talk about this othering and also the inclusion, I not only talk about Manipur, I talk about different kind of peoples, like as I have said earlier, those peoples who are in the mainland India, who are begging days and nights for just to get 2 meals a day. And these peoples cannot access to English language. So whether the big question is like, are they being a part of this larger trans liberation movement? What are their contribution, and what are the peoples who are in the privileged position do for them? Likewise, if you look at the other subaltern community, there are people who are refugees, the Rohingya refugee in Bangladesh, the Kashmiri and Hindu minorities in Bangladesh. There are a lot of people whose voices are always in the margin. So how do we make sure, how do we empathize to bring those voices to be a part of the larger liberation movement? Otherwise, these ideas of human rights movement, gender development, somehow got frustrated in the midway. So there is a lot of division. So if we go for a common goal, then being a responsible person in the movement, then we should never left out other people's voice. If they are not able to speak in different languages, then we should take the responsibility to plead for them.
You're a very, very vocal advocate for all of them. I wanted to touch briefly on your work with history and Métis history specifically. Tell me a little bit about that.
Because we get very less opportunity. So the resources that we have is very minimal. That's why I have been always trying to use that resources in as much as I can in the way it should able to bring up narratives from that small land and peoples. That is the whole idea why I always focus on, and it's very competitive. It's very competitive. Queer and transgender funds, project, and also in so many things, all the developments are very competitive. 100 to thousands, thousands to billions. So people like me doesn't have enough
Access to funds.
It's not asset, but enough opportunity to get to be a part of those competition. So
Okay.
in that billions of people are looking for a unique one.
Identities, yeah.
So that uniqueness, how do I can participate in that competition? So it's not possible. So the world is looking for a unique methodology, the world is looking for a unique peoples, but my uniqueness often lived in the periphery. So it's all about power. So who is holding the central power and how the power is being executed. So people like me can't be a part of that competition. That's why being a person coming from a very underprivileged and oppressed section of community, what I can do for my community is protecting my memories and dreams. That's why I write this story. At least not today, but in the years to come, maybe after 10 years, there will be a lot of students, young people who really wanted to explore what was happening in Manipur during those days. There will be LGBTIQ people, young people who wanted to know more about inclusion, diversity, who have this commitment to be more inclusive in this movement. And definitely this book will give a beautiful insights and powerful insights to these people. So I'm leaving this as a legacy to my community.
It's a very strong legacy, I must say. What does your future look like, Santa?
My future is to be able to live freely, and my future is to see Manipur a very peaceful land like before.
It's a very beautiful place. I've been to Imphal once, like I was telling you, for one day about 30 years ago now, to film something. And I just remember standing on a hill looking out onto an extremely green, clean, beautiful place. And when I see the images that I see in the news today, it breaks my heart. It really does.
It's really disturbing. Every night, my house is located just beside a highway. Then, a few months back, it was like every evening was like, in mainland India, it's like Diwali. Firing was like a Diwali. It was like firecrackers. So it's very disturbing. And the most painful experiences that I have encountered in this ongoing conflict is the division of the trans people who belongs to different ethnic community. So it really breaks the solidarity that I have established for the last 21 years. And it's really, really painful to see all those divisions.
It's going to take some time to rebuild. But, you know, people like you, they should be all right, I reckon. We've got 20 minutes left, and I want to open this up to the audience. Do we have mics for the audience? Questions? There's a gentleman there in a checked shirt. Avada onnu kodukko mic.
Good morning. So yesterday I was reading about you on Wikipedia, and I saw that you have filed a public litigation in Supreme Court challenging the guidelines regarding blood transfusion for transgenders. And I am working in the medical field, and I'm sure that most hospitals in India follow NACO guidelines regarding blood transfusion. So I wanted to ask you if you have faced any difficulty in convincing Indian doctors for a change, and do you think that Indian doctors are actually open for a change regarding this subject?
Doctors are terrible community. Doctors, even these scientists or scientific research, these are all very patriarchy according to my understanding. Everything they project on gender, two sexes only. So that was the reason why blood donation is permanently banned for the transgender people, sex worker, MSML having sex with male. So like my challenge to the Supreme Court of India is that I ask the government of India to do this blood screening for all the people whosoever wanted to donate blood. Why they categorize people, compartmentalize people based on their sexual occupation, or based in their occupation and gender identity and sexual identity. That is a systematic discrimination that's there in the law. So we need to change that law in order to give equal privilege to the to these categories of people to access healthcare. For example, transgender people, not in Manipur, but in mainland India, they live in group. Okay, they have their own colony, they have this Gharana system, and there's no one to support them. If one trans sister or trans brother got sick tomorrow and requires blood, it is a trans family who is going to donate blood.
Yep.
So are we going to see our people dying in front of us? Don't we have that much of privilege from the state, from the government of India, to able to donate blood for the people who are very much dear to us, who are very much loved to us? So that is the reason why I filed that litigation. And it's very unfair to put a blanket ban on the blood donation for the transgender people and a sex worker and MSM. It's also unethical.
It's unethical. Any more questions? I can't see anything. Really? Oh, there is? Sorry. There, lady in pink on the side.
Hi. Thank you so much for being with us here today. This was really insightful. I had a question on, identity and cultural mainstreaming. So, India is a country where it's so much of Bollywood and cricket and cultural, iconoclasms have an impact and influence on people. Where do you think cultural mainstreaming in terms of movies, music, pop culture, do you think trans identities have been showcased with the equity they deserve? And where do you think, where would you like the vision for this? Where can strides be made? So where do we stand today, and where can strides be made? And of course, how does that influence the larger public?
Like trans visualization, it's very problematic. It's very problematic. When you look into this new development that's taking place in Bollywood, a lot of the trans characters are taken by the cisgender peoples. Like I've seen this Akshay Kumar, and there were movies. I'm not following Bollywood, but actually in a lot of the news that I have followed, it was written. There was also a TV serial called Sakti or something, which conflict transgender identity and intersex peoples. So trans visualization is very sensitive, and transgender people should be hired to take the main character in those visual presentation. Otherwise, somebody taking the roles of transgender people is a kind of transphobic approach, is trying to oppress our boys. Because, like for example, if my trans sister is taking a man character in a movie, then when I see that movie, I can relate myself to that character. So if Akshay Kumar is taking a trans role, how can I relate my my identity with that character? Because I've seen that man as a very bold, strong hero. So it's completely not a part of the larger. It's not contributing to the visibility of trans movement or identity.
And what about, that's about who plays the roles, but what about actual stories itself, whether it's literature or movies or TV? Do you see enough transgender characters in stories?
No, there is not enough transgender representation. We haven't treated as a kind of specimen for people's research. Like, for example, there are a lot, please don't feel offensive, let's accept also some ugly truth. There are a lot of people's PhD students and other people's academic who approach us to do their research, but they actually cannot fill the deepest core of transgender peoples. So when the report comes out, it always comes out in a very diluted manner. So about cisgender peoples, they come with this whole imagination of how they created transgender peoples, how they see transgender peoples. Transgender people, for instance, there are transgender peoples who are very good in writing. There are transgender peoples who are very good in, writing poems. And the way transgender people express their feelings in poems is amazing, I should say. There are a lot of trans friends who write poems who do not have this chance to get it published. But they write in a very good way. So they use a lot of metaphor, and they see the world is completely different from the way cisgender people see the world. So the whole imagination of transgender peoples by the cisgender heterosexual peoples often put in that research and the methodology. So
they treat you like specimens in a lab kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like that. Transgender peoples are always projected as a dead figure, helpless. But we also do have certain spaces, community spaces, where we enjoy a lot, like other cisgender peoples. We have our lovers, we share our stories to each other. So that's one way how we survive, that enables us to continue our survival.
In the early part of the book, one of the things I loved was, as a young boy, you used to be the translator of your senior Nubimambi sister's love letters. That was really lovely. I loved reading about that. Yeah. More questions, gentlemen here.
Thank you for sharing your story and, talking us about the book. So my question is more about Manipur probably, and how violence affects communities. As you were talking about, probably what saddens you the most is the rift it's caused between the Meiteis and the Kukis right now. So, I just want you to talk a little bit more about that, because I think marginalized communities as yours, as you talked about, when things are happening, they get left out. But when violence affects, as you're referring to police violence, there is AFSP in Manipur for such a long time, how does it affect the community? And I'm going to put you a provocative point. If there were somebody from the Kuki community sitting up there, what would her experiences be? Because you are from the majority community. Still, will she be more marginalized? Will there be bitter stories that she would have? Just curious.
I actually do not want to take majority in my community, in Meitei community. The majority and minority is a big game from the British ruler. So that is how the division started. And it has deeply influenced different communities that once coexisted harmony in Manipur. So like for the transgender peoples, whether it's from the Kuki community, Naga community, or Meitei community, we all have the same ground reality. We all face the same amount of discrimination and violence in family and society. And the most painful things that happens in this ongoing conflict to the transgender people is like, as I have said earlier, it has divided the community. We also got kind of influence from the larger, protester. So like, there's a lot of division. So I always tell my people that if Manipur is getting liberated tomorrow, then are we getting liberation? Because it's not our liberation. It's not trans liberation. It's the liberation for the, for the cisgender heterosexual people. It's whether Kuki, Naga, or Maite, it's not our liberation. It's their liberation. So I always wanted to make sure my community stay together and continue be in touch with each other, back each other. That is one way, one message that I always convey to both my Kuki community and my Meitei community. And on the other hand, I'm really concerned about my Kuki brother and sister, trans brother and sister, because being a Christian community, it's again very difficult for them to come out and then live openly in their society. So before the conflict, Imphal was like a transgender hub. All these hill people used to come down to Imphal and share spaces with Meitei community and work in beauty parlor runs by Meitei transgender peoples. That was the kind of belongingness, that was the kind of trust that we had. Then because of this conflict, even though we wanted to be together, then there are other powerful forces that will surveillance over us and then targeted us. This is the reason why we are kind of keeping a distance for the moment, but definitely we'll come together. We'll come together. For trans people, we'll come together. There are indifferences. I understand. It's a diverse community, but definitely at the end of the day, transgender peoples will come together. We will have huge fight, but we can reconcile into
Quickly.
in a photo plate. That's the trans people. That's the beauty of trans community.
Any more? There's a question here. Lady in the striped dress.
Hello, I'm from Canada, and I'm curious, you mentioned the US. Now because there's been a turn with Trump against particularly transgendered community, will that impact India, or are you worried about that impacting your life or India?
Could you repeat the first part? We didn't hear you clearly.
Because Trump has got in, and the anti-transphobia, or the transphobia that's happening, which is very intense, and it's coming to Canada as well. Will that impact India, or are you worried that it will impact India?
It will impact. India is having this colonial hanging over. We got a huge influence from white peoples. It's going to affect the transgender community. So I wanted to talk a lot more about that, but I'm sorry because I'm traveling to California very soon. That's why my professor suggested me to say anything about this development that will create a problem
Well,
to my
may I speak in your stead? The good thing about the Indian system is that it isn't an executive system. So some man who feels like it can't wake up one morning and just change the law. And the existence of transgender people and their rights are enshrined in law in India, the third gender and others. And so for that to change, it's going to take some doing. And I'm not sure it's as easy as it is for some guy in the Oval, whatever it is, to do what he did. Americans are going to have to think seriously about the kind of system they have if one human being can change it all for an entire nation. Good luck to them. Any more questions? Lady in pink here.
Hi, good morning. First of all, I want to say you look so beautiful today. I was looking at you like, what a bright lipstick shade, how you picked the jewelry. I was admiring you from here. And I want to share my experience once. The last Pride Walk in Trivandrum, I was there supporting them. And when I was returning back to my PG, I was traveling in an auto, and that driver was salting me for no reason. I was surprisingly what I have done to him, just like that. And I stepped down in my stop and I asked him, why are you scolding me? Like, what I have done to you? And he was, for my surprise, he is telling that you are supporting and you are gone to Pride Walk. Why you have gone? And I was totally surprised that in this century, these kind of people exist. So what do you think still we are making so awareness, we are still supporting and we are trying to make these people into our, like us. So what do you think still people are not, what do your opinion about, why still people not acceptable to transgender community and why are they so anger towards them? I don't understand why they clearly have this much angry towards those people. So, and also I want to ask how you think that the young people like us can do to support you more.
Yeah, we cannot generalize people. There are women who are very misogynist. There are men who are misogynist, and there are trans people who are very transphobic. Okay? If all the trans peoples are trans affirmative, what happens to US might not be happen today. So there are influence. It's all about power. It's all about how power executed and how some sort of people understand and see the society and how some sort of people kind of trying to execute their powers, their feminine powers and masculine powers. It depends upon the individual. And talking about ally, then allyship can change. Today, you and my allyship might be different. It comes in a different format. Tomorrow it may come in a different format, in alternate formats. So allyship is all about requirements, how you can contribute to the trans liberation movement. Maybe today I need editing all my stories, then Miriam can help me to do that. And tomorrow maybe I have this intention to organize a pride walk, then being a part of that pride walk by Miriam is,
a kind of allyship.
It needs a lot of constant efforts to be together. Yeah.
Any more questions? No? Excellent. Or, oh, no, there's a lady in the back there.
Hello, ma'am. Actually, I wanted to ask you that Indian Constitution gives right to every gender equally. Then why don't transgender community fight for their rights? Because till today, I see that transgender is kept away from the society.
The Constitution and realities is completely two different entity. Indian Constitution talks a lot about inclusion, diversity, and also freedom about peoples, but in reality, it's not there. It's not been implemented fully. That is the reason why not only trans peoples who are in the margin of every section are still struggling and battling for their voices. So Constitution, if one follow the Constitution truly, then the story, the incident that this girl encounter in that journey might not happen. So follow the Constitution, but actually how many of us and the state would follow the Constitution fully? That's...
So, ma'am, don't you think that transgender community should fight for their rights?
Pardon?
They do.
So, don't you think that transgender community should fight for their rights?
Yeah, definitely. And in this battle, what I observed from the cisgender peoples is like they are pushing away the transgender community from the larger liberation movement. So there is women rights movement, there is child rights movement, there is disabled rights movement, and I hardly see intersectionality in there, because if you are belongs to underprivileged community, then people throw that responsibility to that community or the group of peoples to only fight for their rights. So we need to do a lot of intersectionality and also a lot of solidarity efforts in every movement. So transgender peoples, for me, I cannot say that transgender people should fight for their rights lonely. So we require other people's support. And if the mainstream community fights for their rights, then definitely there will be a doors opening for the transgender peoples to be able to enter there and participate in that movement. It's not that in the larger movement, somebody invite transgender peoples and keep in the corner just to be a part of that movement. Our voice should be there. So it's in every movement. I think collective perspective is very much important. One perspective or a common perspective cannot bring a very effective movement.
To everyone.
In every movement, collective perspective is different. The way one sees the world might be different from the way I see the world. So that two different perspectives should comes together to kind of bring a very comprehensive and substantial understanding of the diverse thought and ideas that people have.
000 blinking at me. Thank you, Santa. Thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot.
Miriam.
Thank you, all of you. And here's to a shrinking distance between our highest ideals and our basest selves. Good morning and have a great time. Oh, and please, go and get The Yellow Sparrow. It's a great read. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.